Patio Furniture. Lisa was taking her usual Monday morning jog in her suburban tract neighborhood, but today, 20 minutes in, her breasts felt abnormally heavy. Her first thought was, did her period come early? Though that almost never happened. Plus, this business now, it felt different. That they were engorging and then backing off, and gosh, if she didn't know better, it felt like the damn things had a mind of their own. She rounded the community tennis courts and was coming up on the pool where she liked to swim laps in the afternoon. Her breasts had shrunk back down, and hopefully that was that. But no, now they were definitely filling again, straining against her modest medium 34B sports bra. She had a terrifying thought. What if they kept increasing in size and then exploded, like those water balloons you fill up with the squirt guns at the county fair, until one pops and someone wins a prize? Lisa cut the run short and went home. Her husband Chuck was in his downstairs office, but you didn't want to involve him in this, and it might be nothing, and she headed up to the master bath and took a look in the mirror. They were larger than normal at the moment, though only slightly. But this was too weird. She took a shower, and the TV in the bathroom had CNN, and when she got out, the host was telling you about a Senate filibuster, and the darn situation started amping up again. After lunch, Lisa made an appointment with the doctor. She still wasn't going to tell Chuck, but that night there was a baseball game on, and she felt herself swelling, and when Chuck asked for the changer, he did a double take and said, "Whoa, babe, you didn't like go on the pill or something on me, did you? Those beauties are looking ripe, I must say." This is one reason she regretted marrying Chuck. He had his okay qualities, but when you stripped it away, he had his head up his ass, no different than back at his college frat house. "Since you ask," she said, "the answer is no, but I do have a circumstance that's concerning me a bit. Perhaps I'm retaining water." "So go in and find out," Chuck said. "That's why we got Kaiser. Though I wouldn't lose sleep over it, honestly." He smiled and added something about the fallout from turning 30, how your body, and obviously glands now, can change and not necessarily for the worse. Lisa decided if they had a backyard pool, she'd push him out an upstairs window into it. In the morning, Chuck seemed more sympathetic and drove her to the doctor, and when she checked in, they gave her a male doctor's name she didn't recognize, and she asked Chuck in that case to please come in with her. The doctor had a very slight Eastern European accent. "You've used the word alarmed more than once," he said, after examining things. "For what reason?" "The situation's been better today," Lisa said. "There's not as much fluctuation, but even now, I know you don't know me physically, previously." "I understand," the doctor said. "Have you engaged in any new dietary practices? Medications, herbal remedies, unusual exercise routines? Experienced a recent injury, anything of that nature?" "Nope, not that I'm aware of." "Exercise can increase women's boobs," Chuck said. "I thought they refuted all that shit." "Yes, by itself unconfirmed," the doctor said. "But in conjunction with other elements, exercise may affect the hormonal index. How was your sex life, if I may ask? Any recent alterations or additions there?" "Okay, bud, that's enough," Chuck said. "I beg your pardon," Lisa said to Chuck. "Dr. Wells, I truly apologize for that." "No offense taken," the doctor said. "I'll let you folks go. I'm going to look into it, whether anything appears in the anecdotal record or otherwise." "And then what?" Chuck said. "Then we'll be in touch, myself or a colleague, At this point, your assessment of water retention is a valid parameter. Back in the car, Chuck asked Lisa if she'd like to stop for a burger at In-N-Out, and she said she wouldn't mind, and they ate in silence, though there were a couple of guys in the next booth, and one of them was kind of cute, and Lisa felt her breasts swelling. That night, she called her sister Wanda. Wanda listened without interrupting, took her time processing it, and said, hate to say it, Lee, and this sounds so silly and insane, but could they be behaving like a man's, That's unfortunately crossed my mind, Lisa said, and if the only time it happened was me admiring the guy in the hamburger place, then I don't know, I might agree with you, but it's been so goddamn random. But has it really, Wanda said? I mean, jogging? Could you have noticed something intriguing and kind of like absorbed it subliminally? Or thought about someone? Fantasized? No idea. I'm just throwing it out there. You're saying, keeping it more real, maybe the baseball players in the uniforms? A stretch, but fine. But the TV news person, an older gentleman, I had a crush on him and didn't know it? All's I'm saying, the recesses of the mind, we understand 1% of what's going on in there. If that. Yeah, well, I knew you'd help me. Okay, now let's don't be laying that sarcastic shit on me. What does Chuck say? Oh, he's thrilled. He doesn't give a flying fig what the reason may be. Well, if things, improved bedroom-wise? What are you, a doctor now? Lisa said, and she hung up. She fixed some milk and cookies and sat at the kitchen table. She felt a little bad being hard on her sister. After all, she'd called her, and Wanda probably had some perspective. Wanda had been on the pill earlier in life, and then the reverse. They waited too long to have kids and had to go on the hormones. Then, of course, the breastfeeding and admittedly the massive boobs for a while. But gee, could any part of that have made sense? Lisa went on her phone and found a photo of her old high school boyfriend. He'd located her on Facebook a couple years ago, and they messaged each other occasionally, and of course she kept it quiet from Chuck. There he was, Tim, on vacation in Hawaii, getting ready to go in or out of the ocean. And son of a bitch, her breasts were swelling rapidly. Dr. Wells called back the next morning. Lisa said, I didn't expect such quick turnaround, frankly. Now you have me worried. Please don't be, the doctor said. I wanted to update you on some data I came across. Oh. So, in 1992 in Virginia, in 1998 New Hampshire, and once more in 2014 in Oregon, there were documented cases which preliminarily exhibit characteristics similar to those you describe. Wow. What do they do about it then? Or are you telling me they just ran their course? That's unclear. I'm afraid the casework is open-ended. Additionally, a researcher in Wales described a possibly relevant cluster there as well in the 1980s. Do you have Welsh ancestry by chance? Wait, you're saying that could be a factor? Wouldn't you have like hundreds of thousands of women in the same boat? I do. Fine, on my dad's side. Point well taken, Dr. Wells said. However, the 3 domestic case patients break down a bit further. Patients now? Not necessarily, the generic term. Break down a bit further how? That's where it gets interesting. All 3 were determined to have had scarlet fever as children. All 3 women were also apparently ambidextrous and did have at least some Welsh heritage. Some. Lisa took a moment. I'm those things too, she said. Holy mackerel. Okay, wonderful then, Dr. Wells said. That's an extraordinary confirmation, actually. Wonderful? No, of course. Only that we may have tied into a trail of concrete significance here. Unreal. Allow me to ask you this then. even if these crazy factors did pan out, wouldn't there still be dozens, hundreds of women affected? I mean, I'm assuming scarlet fever is rare, but not that rare, and plenty of people are good with both hands. That's where it becomes interesting on a secondary level, possibly an immunological one. As I'm sure you know, certain root illnesses and diseases and afflictions remain dormant in the body, often forever. Ooh boy. So what you're slowly telling me, I think, is I'm one of the very few, who rattle the friggin' beast? I'd prefer to put it in different terms, but certainly that's a distinct possibility. Lisa said, I appreciate you following through, but being totally candid, it sounds like hogwash. I'll stay in touch, the doctor said. Lisa drove to Walmart. Pushing a cart up and down the aisles helped clear the cobwebs other times when there had been crises. None of them like this, though. On the wall behind the home furnishings was the bank of TVs all these places had, about 25 screens fired up with the sound muted. A third of them had on a golf tournament, the backdrop making you think it was Florida. A third had an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie. The final third had a commercial for the Lloyd Fuller Show. The Lloyd Fuller Show was local. He was a guy with a bad hairpiece who had offbeat, radical-type guests. Lisa typically gave the show a look and then flipped channels. But you remember now, he had on a guest last week who talked about mind control and other mental phenomena, and she'd stayed with it. And it was interesting, though obviously pretty ridiculous. At least maybe. When Lisa got home, she went on the TV station's website, and there was a link to a page for the Lloyd Fuller Show, but not much information, so she called the station. Let's see, the receptionist said. I know the one you mean. I saw the tape. I go to my boyfriend later. Let's try a little of that mental stuff off the show. He goes, that's your department. What do you think he meant by that? Lisa said, are you for real? I'm just playing with you. Here we are. Dieter Bruff is a gentleman's name. Thank you. Do you know, is he local himself or just stopped in town for the show? Welp, let's see. It says here, his bio, he's with Stanton. You're familiar with that? I think so, up on the hill off Waterworks Road. You got it. Stay safe. Lisa hung up. Whatever. Stanton was one of those peculiar places you were aware of but didn't pay attention to. She took a look at their website, founded 20 years ago by a husband and wife, a 2-year college and accredited, which was surprising. Students could get an associate's degree in paranormal studies. Dieter Bruff was the department head. It was 1:45, a Wednesday. School would be in session. It seemed reasonable to take a ride over there. Honey, can you come with me? She said to Chuck. I may have a new lead into my issue, or it could be nothing, but there's a college professor. Lee's, Chuck said. For crying out loud, what are you doing here? Excuse me? I mean, go back to work, why don't you? Ever since you quit the bank, you've been creating these projects, rearranging shit, like the patio furniture. Who does that? That's my take. You want the truth. Lisa ran through other ways besides pushing him out a window that she could mess this guy up and get away with it. She drove out to the college anyway, and there was a note on Professor Dieter Bruff's door that he was out of town on a book tour and would be returning in 2 weeks. Her breast had swelled, God knows why, when she found the faculty building and approached his office. Now they reduced themselves. She must have missed that part on the TV show, that he wrote a book. Didn't everyone these days? Separately, she wondered how a supposed professor could take time off, la-di-da, in the middle of a semester. But forget that. She found a Starbucks and bought Dieter Bruff's book on Kindle and voraciously ran through it to see if anything could apply to her situation. There wasn't a lot. There was too much fluff, and it was poorly written. The takeaway was that what the mind believes, the mind can achieve. Whoopee. But if there really was any connection to her deal, he must have said something on the show that triggered something. At the end of the book was a list of recommended other materials. They were mostly self-help, how to overcome life's obstacles books. But one stood out called Psychic Discoveries Behind the Iron Curtain. That one was from the 1970s, it said, translated from Russian. Lisa couldn't find it online, and it was a long shot, but why not try the library? The librarian puttered around on the computer with a furrowed brow and then said to follow her, and the book was in a special reference room the librarian opened with a key. Please make yourself comfortable, the woman said, and of course, no eating or drinking in here. There were glass cases, and there was an armchair and a footrest, and Lisa sat there for an hour. The book took you places you didn't expect. There was an experiment she wanted to try, where people were focused on objects and someone in another room was picking up what they were. When they stuck a barrier made of lead between the sender and receiver, it stopped working. She drove home. Okay, maybe it was conceivable that somehow she'd empowered herself to raise this affliction, as the doctor put it, from its dormant state. If so, how would you reverse the bullshit? Not with the Dr. Wellses of the world, she didn't think. If anything, they wanted to guinea pig you with pharmaceuticals. She wondered if you might actually have to go to Russia. It was silly, but she checked her passport to make sure it was still valid. In the morning after breakfast, the Lloyd Fuller show came on. Today there was an ordinary mainstream guest. The person was outlining safety repair tips for the novice homeowner. Lisa had an idea. Chuck would be fine with an experiment where you sit him down in the other room and you instruct him to concentrate on your breast size, and you explain how it worked in Russia, and you give him 5 minutes and challenge him to increase them to mammoth proportions. Then he comes in and checks how he did. You might rig something up electrical, some loose wire type thing that then shocks his ass as it's never been shocked before. You'd have to be careful, of course, to keep your own self out of it. Lisa decided it couldn't be rocket science, and she didn't have anything else to do today, so might as well head to the hardware store and do a little research.